Welcome to the Learn SQL by solving a case study example. In this particular case study, we are going to be doing a couple of things. We are going to be learning the basics of select statements. We're going to do some group bys and we're going to do some joins. Along with that, parallelly, obviously, we will be solving some case studies, some questions and answers, right? So if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know and I will adjust my pace accordingly and try to explain. For this particular session, you're going to be sitting down and watching because again, not all of them have SQL setup or the tools set up to basically work on this. So what we'll do is you sit back and watch and then answer some of the questions that I'm trying to do in terms of thinking, right? So help me think on how should I do it and what should I be doing it. So I'll be visually showing you some of the things that I do it, how I do it on Excel, and then how I'm going to replicate the same thing on SQL, right? I'm going to take it slow. I'm going to give one example, give some breather time, then give another example. And hopefully this will give you a sneak peek in how business questions get answered. So we're going to start with really basic questions and then we're going to take it into some advanced questions that we are going to answer, right? So let's get into some of the data that we want to look at, right? So in this particular case study, we have three different tables available with us. We have the order details table. You can imagine this as a superstore data, the one that you go to regularly. Now you cannot go obviously, but the ones that you go to a retail store where you pick up stuff from the shelves, you come out, you check out on a POS system, and then that order essentially gets captured into a system. And we have certain columns that we will look into later on, but we have certain columns that get captured, like what's the order ID, what's the date that particular transaction was done, which retail store it was done in, what was the product that was sold, and how much of that quantity was sold. So all of this information gets into the order details. It's basically any transaction that you make in a retail store and you basically purchase something in terms of quantity, right? So I hope many of you have all gone to a retail store and hopefully understand what this order will be looking like. Similarly, we have product information, which is where all the product information is stored, where they have the product name, which product category it is in, and what's the price of that. And the last table that we have is the property information, which basically stores at which locations was the sales made, right? And there are a couple of locations. Any retail store will have multiple locations. So this one basically gives at what location that property is presented. So let's individually look at the order details, product information, and the property info and see how our tables are going to be looking like. So for this particular example, I've chosen really basic tables. So we get practice enough of our skills and also learn SQL while we are doing it. Now, once you have seen all the three tables that are available to you, let's look at each of them in detail. So in the first table, we have this order details table. And as you can see here, you'll have like a order ID, which is unique in nature. And this will be one of the primary key. And then we have order date, in which date the transaction was made. And we have orders ranging from 2015 January to 2016 December. So that's the order range in terms of date. We also have the property ID. Now note, we don't have the property name here, right? Just the ID. Although having name would be very beneficial in terms of identifying what the property is or the location of it, but we don't have it in this order details table. Now with the product ID, we have basically again IDs, but not necessarily the name, right? Now, where is these two columns information in terms of details present, it's present in the individual tables that we have here, right? So you have a property table where you have basically you'll see that there are 1 to 20 numbers available here. Now 1 to 20 means there are 20 stores that are there for this particular superstore, and you'll see that the property IDs that we have on the right hand side is 1 to 20, and they have the property located in certain cities under which there are also above which there are certain states. Now multiple states, there are states multiple times occurring here, which means each of the city can have each of the multiple cities in a state that can have this particular store. Like for example, Virginia has two different cities here, which means it has two stores, which means it has two stores in Virginia. And similarly, if you look at California, you'll see there are two other stores there also, right? So basically you have the properties, 20 unique properties, but each of them are then present either single in a particular state or multiple within a state, right? So that's the property or the retail store location that we are speaking about, right? I'll use property and location interchangeably, but that's the number of retail stores that we have entirely in this particular table. And similarly, we have the product ID here, which is from 1 to 94. So we have roughly around 94 products, unique products available in this particular superstore that the order details system has captured. And all of these 90 products, that is from product ID 1 to product ID 94, is present in this particular product table, right? So we have three individual tables, one where you have the point of sales captured information where the purchase was made, and then we have two other tables supporting giving that information for the property ID and the product ID, right? And notice we have only the quantity, we don't have the price at what it was sold, neither do we have the total sales that we have sold there, right? So if I ask the question how much sales was made, we cannot answer this with a single table, right? We have to use this table, and this table. So you have to leverage all of these three tables to get to some of the business questions that we are answering. So far, any questions, guys, on the superstore tables that we have looked at here, right? I hope everything on the table side is clear, because once this is clear, then we'll simply get into the coding part, and we will be coming back on and off on this particular data and see how we can do it here and then replicate it on SQL. Okay, so moving on to the SQL side of things. I've already imported these three tables. Sorry. I've already imported these three tables already into SQL, and they are present here. So you'll see that I have the order details, products, and property info, right? So three of these tables are present here. There are some additional tables, you can ignore them, but primarily these are the three tables that we'll be looking at in this particular SQL, right? So it's present in SQL. I've just imported the Excel files within this thing. Awesome. Now let's look at some of the basic questions that we can. Now let's look at some of the basic questions that we can answer here. So the basic questions that we are going to be doing is working on some of the select statements that we have here, and we're going to find the maximum quantity sold in a transaction. So any guesses of how we can find this, guys? So when I say I want to find the maximum quantity sold in any transaction, right? So what we're going to look at is basically what in a particular transaction, let's say if you bought 10 potato chips or Lay's chips, right? So that's the quantity 10. So in this particular, retail superstore that we have, what are the maximum quantity that is sold in a particular order, right? So if you look at this particular thing, it's basically this quantity that is there. And if I just do a filter here, you'll see that I'm getting 3 as the maximum, right? Or even if I just use a function called as max, right? And if I just do this particular column, you'll see that I'll get max as 3, right? So let's do a basic query on SQL itself, right? So I'm just going to use another file here, right? And I'm going to answer the first question here, right? So the first question is, select the maximum quantity in the order details, right? So for this example, I will require the order details table here, and this will become your from table. And I'm going to do then select star from order details and give a semicolon here, right? So what this means is that if I run this, it's basically going to give me all of the the rows that are present in this particular data. Okay, let me select this particular data. Okay, so if I run this particular piece of code, you'll see that I'm basically getting the order ID, order date property, and property product ID and quantity in this particular query, right? Now, next, obviously we want to get the maximum quantity. So if I want to get the maximum quantity, what I can do is I can simply say max of quantity, right, in this particular data, and say run this query, and you'll see that I'll be getting the maximum quantity that was sold in any transaction that we had, right, in any of the unique transaction. So this way we are able to basically do a very basic select statement where we are just only selecting like a certain column and then just selecting max of it. And remember how I did it in the Excel? I simply used a max function, and basically this is typically how you do it in Excel, and then you want to look at it in SQL in the similar fashion, right? The answer will typically be the same answer that we are looking at, right? Now, obviously you got the max quantity, right? And similarly, if I can just replace this, right, with count and then give star here, right? Which means I'm getting now 2 different columns, right? So this is column 1 and this is column 2. And let's see what this particular statement will then give, right? So if I select this, you'll see that you'll get 3 as the maximum sold in any of the transactions that we have. And how many of those transactions are there within the data? There are 5,000 transactions there, right? So how did I get the 5,000 here? If I do max and then I just select this, it's going to go through all of these records and tell me where is the max number present there. And simply, if I just do the count of all the rows that are present here, you'll see I'll get the 5,000 that you have here, right? So you get the quantity here, right? And then you also get the, what we say, count here. So that way we're able to establish, like with few basic simple functions, certain amount of details from this particular table. So I hope this example is clear, and we can now move on to the next example in this particular basic questions, right? Now here we obviously found the maximum quantity sold in a transaction, and the answer is 3 here. Now similarly, what we're going to do is find the unique products in all the transactions, right? So we're going to get all of the unique products that are there in all of the transactions. Sometimes it may happen that you have 100 products, but not all products get sold. So in this particular scenario, what we're trying to do is just get the unique products in a particular transaction table, right? So if I had to look at the unique products in the transaction table here, if I take the D column to another sheet, paste it here, you'll see that I will have 5,000 records here, but they will be repeating, right? So if I select this entire column and say data and say remove duplicates, say okay, you'll see that 4,906 rows will be deleted, right? And 94 unique values will remain, which means there are 94 products now, where compared to the 5000 rows that we are now having basically 94 of those rows or the products that are unique in the table, right? So this is what we're trying to replicate. The end result of this query should be, what are the unique quantities that, what are the unique products that we have in the order details table, right? So for this particular example, right, we'll use another code. We're going to use this particular code. So I'm going to say select, obviously, in this particular example, and I'm going to select it from this particular table, right? So I'm just going to select a certain column, and that's going to be product ID, because we want to get, remember, we want to get the unique number of products that are available in that particular table, right? Now here, if I do select product ID from the TR order details table, you'll notice that if I do run the statement, I will get 5000 rows here. Remember, when I copied the column first, right? If I just copied this particular column and pasted it here, it will have 5000 rows here, right? It will have 5000 rows, but then we remove the duplicates. We remove the duplicates to get only 94 of the unique products, right? Now, basically, if I run this particular code with this, it's giving me 5000 rows, but hey, remember, we want the unique products, right? So there is this keyword called as distinct, right? This distinct keyword basically helps you to get the unique product IDs in the order details table. Now, if I run this particular statement, you'll see that first I got 5000 rows when I selected that particular column, but now I got 94 rows that from that particular column, right? And basically now I am able to get 94 of the products that are available, right? So this is the distinct method that we have available. Okay, so far, how are you feeling about SQL, guys? Easy, difficult, hard? How do you think it is? Okay, now the expectation here is not to get into the details and focus on a lot of other things. We're just trying to focus on a case study here, right? So my attempt will be to basically ensure that we are looking at in a holistic way in how we use it in business, right? Close to the business. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So now let's make things interesting, and I'm just going to take a little deviation in terms of this particular thing. Now I want to see what was the maximum number of quantities sold for each of this product, right? So for example, if I go and look at this particular thing, right? We are in the same examples, question 2, but I'm just trying to give another meaning to this, right? So here we're going to learn a little bit of sort example and see how we can incorporate it within that select statement, right? Now let's look at these two columns in particular, right? So if I just take these two columns, right, and I'm going to take only the select statement here, and I'm going to select product 1. So if I do product 1, you'll see that the quantities that it sold is 1, 2, 3, right? And similarly, if I do product 2, you'll see that quantities it sold is 1, 2, 3, right? So there are multiple such products that are available, and I want to know if there are any of these products that sold, minimum product, like one product in a particular transaction, right? So let's see how we can do that, right? So to do that, what we will be doing is we will remove duplicates like the distinct that we have, right? Then what we can do here is you're going to use a sort method combined with the remove duplicates, right? So how will we do that? If I just say sort of, let's say product ID, and then I add another level and say product quantity by descending order and say okay, you'll see that the product ID 1 will be sorted in such a way that all the quantities that are maximum will be available on the top, and And similarly, if you go to 2, you'll see that the maximum product 3 is available, and it continues like that. Now if I just remove duplicates, remove duplicates just on the product ID and say okay, right, you'll see that you're only getting like 94 products again in this particular example. And if you look at the quantity here, all the maximum and minimum in this particular scenario will be 3, right? So we have this maximum within this, and the minimum within this also will be 3, right? Which means that there is no product that did not sell at a maximum level of 3. All of the products basically sold 3 quantities at a time in a particular transaction, so which is good. But let's see if we can try to get the same information here, right? So if I do product ID and then I will say the quantity here, then I get the 2 columns available here. And then what I'll do is I will say order by. So this example I wanted to introduce the order by. So I can say order by, and I can give the product ID, and I can sort it by ascending order, right? And then I can sort quantity, right, by descending order, right? So I can, it's the same thing that I did in this particular example where I sorted product ID by smallest to largest. I sorted quantity by largest to smallest, and I was able to achieve this particular result. And similar result where I'm taking the 2 columns, I'm taking product ID in ascending order, that is smallest to largest, and I'm taking quantity in descending order, that is largest to smallest, and then doing a distinct on the product ID. And if I then select there, you'll see that in this particular scenario you're getting a distinct of like let's say 3, 2, 1, right? So each of the products sold at least 3 or 2 or 1. And then finally, if we just apply a condition where we say where quantity is equal to 3, right? This one will be in the previous order here. Then we're getting the same result, 94 rows, but with 3 as a quantity amongst them, which is equivalent to what we have here, right? If there was some differences in the product quantities that were sold, and some products did not have three quantities sold, then it would have shown up here, but it's not there. So this is what it is, right? Now, yes, so this method is basically used to check the duplicates and all of that thing, Dinesh, where we simply try to check the product ID, remove the duplicates, and see what we have. And there is some other methods, that is through group bys, and we'll see how we are going to use group bys in the next few questions. So we are going to be using some of the group bys and answering these questions. So far we have answered the questions that we have within this, and we're able to find the unique products in all of the transactions. But not only that, we checked whether each of them sold a maximum of 3 products, and yes, all of them sold a maximum of 3 products within this particular thing, right? Similarly, like, I just want to ensure that this concept is gotten. So what we're going to do is try to look at the unique properties that are available. So here's a question back to you. If I look at this particular table, and if I look at the property table, and if I just remove the duplicates in this particular thing in terms of property, how many unique properties do you think I'll have within the data? How many unique products do you think I'll have within the data? If I do a remove duplicates of this, or a distinct of unique properties that are available. So what's your answer, guys? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20? Or is it 25? What is the unique number that you will be getting here? 20. That's right, Arvind. So we have the right answer from Arvind. Yes, so that's 20. And let's quickly do that so that we can move on to the next example. That's right, guys. So you got it. You got this concept where you are able to identify the unique basically properties from this particular table that we have here, right? So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to say distinct property ID, right, from the order details, give a semicolon, and then extract the unique ones that we have, right? So as you rightly said, we have 20 rows in this particular thing, right? So obviously, because there are 20 products, had it been that a particular store was shut down in certain period and it was not available for that 2 years, then we would have gotten a lesser number. But in this case, all the properties were open and selling at least one transaction in any of the months or in the years, and hence we have 20 unique properties coming from the transaction details, right? So that's the basic level of questions that we are able to answer, and this sort of gave you a flavor of how the select statement basically works in terms of answering simple questions like selecting the maximum quantities, the count of records that are available, checking the unique categories in a column such as products and properties. And now we are ready to and warmed up to move on to the next session of questions, that is group bys, right? Now group bys are again like pivot tables where you pivot your data in such a way that you're able to get much more meaning, right? With transactions, you can only get so much information, but if you are trying to group them or summarize them at certain level, then you're getting much more information out of the data, right? For which we have the questions that we want to try to answer is find the product category that has maximum products, right? So first question, we're going to answer a very easy question and then look for going into the advanced question. Find the product category that has maximum products. So how will you approach this, guys? In the comment section, please mention how can you approach this particular thing, right? So basically, if you want to look at the question, you'll see that if you took a product category, let's say furnishing is the product category, and we have like 5 product categories available here, right? And if you look at the product name that is there, you'll see that there are 96, 94 products, right? So if I just pick one category, let's say furnishings, and look at this particular data, you'll see that furnishings has 26 products. Similarly, if I look at housekeeping, you'll see housekeeping has, let's say, 19 products. And similarly, that's what I want to find out here. Within each of these 5 categories, that is these 5 categories, which of the categories has most number of products? So take an intuitive guess, guys. From these 5 categories, which do you think will have the maximum number of products? Yes, so in case you want the data and you want to load them within SQL, what I'm going to do is I'll give you the location and then you can download the data and use it from there, right? So here's the location. In the chat box I've mentioned the location. You can pick out that link and use that particular thing, right? So the location of the data is in this place. You can go to my GitHub account and then go to this YT_SQL folder and go into the data folder or the TR data folder, and then you will get all these 3 tables that you want. And if you want to download this data, you can click on this data here, right? And just say edit. Just say raw, and you can save as and save it as .csv file so that you can download it to your file, to your system. Okay, so that's the location of where the files are present. Okay, so back to the problem statement here. Which do you think will be which will be the product category that has most number of products in it? Any question? So Priyanshi, nice attempt, but you're going to solve this in a very different way, because it looks like a maximum problem, but the moment you get into the question, you'll see that it will become another problem statement itself. So take a wild guess, guys. Take a guess, and let's see who gets the right answer after we try to solve this particular problem statement. So furnishings, housekeepings, maintenance, office supplies, public areas. Which do you think has the maximum number of products? Anybody? Okay, so let's wait for that, and let's take up some of the questions that we need to be answering, right? So I'll go ahead and try to answer this same question, but let's see how we will be doing. Right, this time I'm going to be using the products table, right? And I'm going to select the data from the products table. So select star from tr products will basically give me all of the data that is present here. So you'll have 94 rows in this particular data. And then now we want to basically get the product category that has the maximum number of products. So if you want to look at this particular question and try to get this answer, right? First, let's look at it how we can get it in the pivot table, right? So if I do select statement here, and if I go to the data tab, insert tab, and insert a pivot table on top of this data, take the unique product categories that I have here, right? And take the count of product ID here, right? So if I do the count of product ID, you'll see basically these are the number of products that are present within each of the category. Okay, so you have furnishings 26 products, housekeeping 19, maintenance 15, so on and so forth, and they all sum up to the 94 products that we have overall, right? So obviously in this particular scenario, if I just sort it by descending order, you'll see that the furnishings will have the maximum number of products in that particular order, right? So that way you're able to see the products that have, the product category that has the maximum number of products available. So obviously furnishings is the answer. Let's see how we can solve that similarly within SQL. So for that, what we need to do is, obviously we need to select the product name, right? And obviously we need to do the count star, right, of this particular thing, right? So we want the product name and the products here, and if I do this particular statement, you'll see that it will give me one particular product, and the count will be giving as 94 here, right? So obviously this is a wrong answer, because hey, where is the product category that is available here, right? So what we need to do is we basically take the product category instead, right? So we'll take the product category instead and then run the statement, and you'll see that the product category will come in, but not all the product categories are coming in, right? So here we'll introduce another keyword. It's called the group by, which is similar to what we did in Excel pivot tables, right? So we'll say group by, and then we'll say product category, right? So here what I want to get is the product category, along with it how many times did it occurred within the data set, right? So as I can give the name to it as, say, count of products within this particular thing, and then if I run this particular statement, you'll see I'll basically get product category count, and then you have housekeeping, office supplies, furnishing, maintenance, and you'll notice that furnishing has the 26 count that we have here, right? Now obviously it's not count by max. It's basically whenever we are trying to answer the questions here, we try to group by and get the entire information, and then we interpret obviously the max of it, right? So if I then say order by in this particular thing, and I order it by the second column, this particular column, right, or in the descending order, you'll be basically getting the top one, that is the furnishings, on top here, which means the maximum number of products that a particular product category has is 26, and the product category that has the maximum number of product categories is furnishings, right? So this completely turned into, although it looks like a max problem statement, but it sort of turned, the way we approach it in terms of writing the code is a little different. Here we are doing it by using group by, right? So that's how this particular thing will be working. Okay, just a moment, guys. Okay, some people are asking how to import the data and all of that. I will show you how to import the data in a while. Okay, hope everybody has SQL workbench and all of that, but okay guys, so there is this feedback form you want to fill in if you want to. So here's the feedback form that you can fill it whenever you can, right? So it's already there, so yeah, just whenever you are ready you can fill it. Okay, cool. So guys, just a small detour on this. If you want to import the data, you can simply right click on the object here, say import data. I'm using MySQL and MySQL workbench here to work on this, right? So here you can import the data by going in here, table data import wizard, right? And then you can select the data that you want to select here. In this particular case, I am in the SQL folder, in the data folder, this one, and you can select this order details, say next, drop the table if it exists, and then choose the CP windows, and then next, and then you import it, right? So any SQL tool will have a import wizard. Just do the import wizard and you can import the data. Awesome. Cool, awesome. So we have this fourth statement that we have there, that's available there, right? And then obviously we want to replicate this where, find the states where the most of the stores are present, and we'll just do a same replication of the same code, but it's going to be basically on the product table that we have, the property table that we have here, right? So similarly, if you go to the insert pivot tables here, right, and take the state that is available here, and then take the count of cities, you'll see that not many of these states have two states. It's actually California and Virginia that have two different stores available. So let's see if we can produce the same results within this SQL here. And in this particular, we are going to take the property info, obviously, rather than the product category. So what I'll do is I will remove the product category in this particular scenario here and take the property info. Sorry, my bad. It should be in this particular place. So we're going to remove the TR products here and take the TR property info, just changing this particular table. And here we want to take the property state, right, and copy the same one in this place here, and then run the statement and then get this output, right? So here you'll get that Virginia and California that you are getting, right? So you'll see that California and Virginia, those are the states that have two different stores in the same state, right? So that's how we answer this particular question, where we're able to find the product category that has maximum number of products, and the state where most states are present is basically these two states, that is Virginia and California. Okay, that way we are able to get two of these questions answered, and got the answer using SQL. So moving on, obviously we have, find the top 5 product IDs that did the maximum sales in terms of quantity, and similarly top 5 in terms of property ID, and these two are much more similar in nature. So let's see how this particular thing works out. So if I go to the statement here, right, obviously we are in the 5th question now. Now we're going to be answering the 6th question, right? So the 6th question, remember guys, find the top 5 product IDs that have did maximum sales in terms of quantity. Now again, this looks like a maximum problem statement, but let's see how we can solve this particular thing, right? So in this particular case, right, again, we come back to the order table, right? So we are now familiar with this data, we are now familiar with this data, right? But now let's come to the order details in which we started our journey with, right? So here I want to find the product ID that did the maximum sales in terms of quantities. And remember, last time we saw the max of this particular thing. Now this time we don't want max. This time we want to sum up the quantities at a product ID level and see which of the product IDs did the maximum quantities, right? So if I had to do this, again, this is a pivot table statement. So remember guys, whenever I'm doing group buys, I'm using pivot table as a backend, right? So if I take the product ID in the rows area, you'll see that I'll have 94 products that are available here, right? Now I want the sum of, I want to see that, that particular product that did the maximum in terms of quantity. So what I'll do is I'll take the sum of quantity to the values area. So if I do the sum of quantity in this particular thing and sort the data by descending order of quantity, you'll see that product ID 78 sold 153 times in 2 years, right? Which means if I look at this particular data here, and look at product 78. Now note, we don't have the product name as such within the same table. Yep. So that way we are having 78. Okay. So if I do 78, you'll notice that the small area rug for public area categories sold 153 times in the entire year, right? So that the quantity of this that sold is obviously high, but the price that you sold of it is 20, right? So effectively the whole sales of this particular product will be 20 into 153, right? That is 3060 of price that it did, right? In terms of sales, it's a very small number. And then, obviously this is not a product that generated a lot of sales, but in terms of number, it sold the highest, right? Does it make sense, guys? Okay. Cool. So let's try to replicate the same example in SQL, where we are trying to find out the top 5 product IDs, that is these 4 product IDs that did the maximum sales in terms of quantity, right? So if I go back to my statement, right, I will select, obviously select from the order details table, right? I will select obviously the product ID, right? And I will also select the quantity, right? But if I select this, I will be basically getting all the 5,000 records that are available. But hey, remember, you want to get the sum of quantity, right? So if I do sum of quantity here as total quantity, then I will get just one row with the entire number of single units sold in the entire transactions table that we have, which means that if I simply sum up all the quantities that you have here, it'll be 10,096, and that's the number that we are seeing here, right? So 10,096, which means it's simply grouping it and then just randomly picking out a product ID that it has and then displaying the number. But obviously this is a wrong output to look at, which means we need to do a little bit of group by to get you the proper output. And how can that be done? We are going to say group by here, right? So group by, and then we're going to say product ID here, so that we can get the proper sum for each of the products. So you'll see that I got the product ID and the total quantity now, but it's not selected in, it's not in the order that we want. So obviously for ordering it, what we'll do is we'll say order by, and we will say it by the second column in descending order to get this output. So if I select this and do this, you'll see that I get the product ID of 78 and total quantity of 153, which is the total quantity that we have in terms of the number of units that are sold, right? So obviously there's a lot of these products that we have, but we don't want to display all the 94 products. What we want to do is we want to limit it to the top 5. So if I just say limit it to top 5 and then run the statement, you will see that I get the top 5 products that are available within this particular transaction table, right? In terms of quantity, right? Does it make sense, guys? Have you understood so far in terms of how we are trying to develop and use the same functions using group by and not with using group by, right? So in the previous examples, you see we just did the count and count, max and count in the overall data, but now as we are trying to answer in a specific question, right, we are trying to do group bys versus just simply using the statement like this, right? So we have got the 6 questions answer where we are getting the top 5 product IDs that did the maximum sales in terms of quantity, right? And similarly, just to seal this concept, what we're going to do is I'm going to take the same statement that we have and and do it for the properties also, right? So if I want to know the top 5 properties that did the sale, right? So it's going to be property ID, and it's just going to be group by property ID. This rest of the details will be similar, right? So the only difference is you're changing this product ID here to property ID, and if you run this statement, you're basically getting the property ID 8, that is they did 551 overall units that they sold, right? So let's look at what that particular property ID is. 8. That means Philadelphia in Pennsylvania did the maximum number of quantity sales in that, right? But did it do maximum in terms of sales, or did the the entire thing did in maximum number of sales in terms of sales, that is price and quantity multiplied? Did that same product do maximum in sales? We'll have to see that, and let's see if that is something that we can answer using SQL too, right? So at this point, guys, we basically learned the select statements. We did some basic max sum functions and all of that, used distinct keyword. We did select star from, order by, all of these things, used where condition also, right? Here we did group bys, we used where conditions, we did order by, and now we are moving into a state where we are going to introduce joins in this particular concept, right? So we graduated from basics to intermediate. now, and we are now going to be learning some joins in this particular scenario to get some details, and then obviously there are some other questions that we will be trying to answer post we try to learn the joins. So what is joins, guys? What comes to your mind when you have joins in your mind? Anybody? What comes to mind when you have joins in mind? Grand total of products? Yes, we can, Dinesh. So grand total of products is here, right? So if you say the grand total is basically sum of this particular thing, which is that 10,096 that we have, right? So if I do this sum, obviously you get the grand total here. Yeah, joins is obviously combining the tables. So how are we going to combine the tables, right? Now, look at the difference that we had. Yes, exactly. So combining tables or data sets. So look at the difference that we have in terms of this question, right? So here you're finding the top, finding the top product category, or we're finding the top 5 product IDs. So we got the product IDs, but product IDs itself doesn't give us the full information, right? What gives us the entire information is the product names, and unfortunately product name does not exist within this particular data, right? So if I had to look at this particular products table that we have, the product name exists here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this particular table's information, bring it into the order details tables, and then summarize it at a product name level to be able to get the product name that we have here, right? So what I'll do here is that I will take product name, category, and price to this table here and join this information here, right? So in Excel, we typically do this particular joins using VLOOKUP. So I will simply say VLOOKUP, right? And I want the product name, right? So I'll say product ID, look up the product ID, and look at this 4 columns that you have here, comma, give the second column that you want, and then exact match, which sort of gives you the product name that is available, right? So you get the product name for all of the 5,000 records that you have here. Similarly, right, if I simply copy this formula, right, and paste it here, I will be changing this to 3, and then I can get the product category for all of the products that are available here. And similarly, if I paste the formula again here and change this to 4, I'll also get the product price along with it, right? So what I did is I just used VLOOKUP, right, to get this information from this table to this table, right? Now, if I go to the pivot table here again and change the data source, right? Now, instead of having 78, which is, the information is not complete, right? Unless you have the name. What I can do is I can remove the product ID and then choose the product name and then sort it by this one, which will give me that small area rug. And we don't have to refer back to the other table to get this name, right? So it basically comes up in the same table itself, right? Now, remember, these 3 columns did not exist earlier, right? What I had to do is I had to apply a VLOOKUP to get it from this table to this table. And that's the whole concept that we are trying to solve using SQL now, right? We will be using an SQL statement to join these 2 things and get the information in one table. And note, we used a particular ID to look from this table, right? So product ID is a foreign key within this table, and within this table it's a primary key, right? So which means in this particular table it's unique. In this table it can exist in multiple rows. The unique key, that is a primary key that is available within this data, is the order ID, right? So obviously we have one common thing between these 2 tables, that is this one and this one, and we were able to join it on this particular thing, right? So these two, we're able to join it, and we're able to get these three columns into this particular data, right? So that's what we are going to be doing now in this 8th question, right? So here we're going to be introducing join, and we're just going to use the left join for this particular scenario, right? So I'm going to take the same statement that we have here. I'm going to take obviously select, right? This time I'm taking all the columns so that we can see what all columns we are extracting here, right? So I'm taking all the columns from this particular table, and I'm going to call this as O table, right? As O table, right? And I'm going to left join. This is where I'm doing that VLOOKUP, right? And then we are going to take the the products table here, this one, and I'm going to call this as P. So we have a order details table and a product detail table, and I gave a alias name to it such that I don't have to use this particular table all the time, the big table. I can just simply use this particular thing, right? So I use that, and then I need to specify on the common ID that we are joining it by, right? So remember, we are joining it by the product ID. So we'll say O dot, and then obviously in O dot we have let's say the product ID that is available, right? So we're going to say product ID is equal to P dot the product ID, right? So remember, in this particular two columns you have the product ID same as the product ID that is there in this table. The column names are same, so I'm saying O dot product ID is equal to P dot product ID here, right? So if I do this particular thing here, run this particular statement, and if I run it, okay, it's giving me error. Sorry, I have to use the left join. I missed this particular word here. Left join, right? So now if I run this particular statement here, you'll see that I have order ID, order date, property ID, product ID, quantity, product ID, product name, product category, and price, and which is very similar to the table that we have produced here, right? We have all the tables, columns that we have within this particular thing, but we also got the 3 additional columns. But not only that, we also got a additional column of the product ID. We don't really need 2 different product IDs here. So typically what we do is we represent O as one table, where I say O dot star. That means I give me all the columns that are there within that, and I want just from P, right? We want the product name, right, comma P dot product category, and comma P dot price, right? So if I do this, what I'm basically getting is the same table that we created here, right? So we have order ID, order date, property ID, product ID, quantity, product name, product category, and price that we have here, right? So all of these 8 columns are now present with me using a join, right? So we basically took all the columns from O table and only 3 columns from the P table and joined it. This is the key here, right? We joined it using a left join. You can check out all of the other joins for this particular thing. I'm going to focus it to one particular join, which is very similar to what we do it in the VLOOKUP format here, but you just need to join it on a table using a ID that we have available here, right? That way you're able to get the information of product table into the order table that we have there. Does it make sense, guys? Yes, no? Okay, now obviously we've just joined the table. Now we need to find the top 5 product names just like we have it here, right? So we want this top 5 product names that are giving, did in terms of quantity instead of the product ID, right? So I'm going to select this and just write it here so that we can group this information here. Okay, so now obviously we want to get the product name that did the maximum quantity, right? So what we'll do is we'll get rid of all the columns that are there in O, and we just take product name here. Similarly, we'll get rid of the product this thing here, and then we want O dot, right? Now we want the quantity here, right? So what we'll do is we'll say sum of quantity, right? Just like we have there in this particular statement, right? So we have the same statement. Only thing is that we have joined this table and have additional columns available with us, right? So basically it's the same thing, but we are only doing group by using this particular column and getting this answer, right? So similarly, I'll just say order by the second column in descending order and run this particular code, right? So you'll see I'll get the same output that we have here: small area, rug, luggage, mirror, and whatever it is. We get this output and we are able to see this output in this particular scenario. So does it make sense, guys, so far? Now that's what we do. We join the tables and then we did the group by to answer this particular question. So what are the top 5 product names that did maximum sales in terms of quantity, right? So we got that, right? But now let's take it a notch above and see which of the 5 products did maximum in terms of sales, right? So that's what we want to get to. Okay, so what do you think, guys? What product will do maximum in terms of sales, right? So in terms of quantity, obviously these are the 5 products, but if I want to get in terms of sales, what do you think we need to do? Okay, so let's look at this particular thing that we have available here. So I have with me, sorry, so I have with me this data, right? So I have order ID, order date, property, and all of that thing. If I want to calculate sales, how do you think we can calculate sales? How do you think we can calculate the sales at a transaction level? Any ideas? So let's say you're buying 10 Lays at the rate of 20 rupees per packet. So if you want to know what's the total sales that happened for that, so how will you do that? Obviously it will be 10 into 20, that will be 200. So in the same case here, if I want to get the total sales that happened in this particular transaction, how do you get it? Right? So that's the thing that we need to be calculating here, which means it is basically your quantity into the price that will get you the sales, right? Obviously that's the first thing that we need to get, right? This sales did not exist, right? So Arvind, yes, that's right. So it did not exist earlier on, now it exists, and so we're able to get the product sales or the transaction sales that is available, and you'll see the numbers are different here, right? So you're taking quantity and multiplying it by the price here to get the total price, and you'll see that's the price that we are getting here, right? So in terms of quantity, obviously one product might have sold and this is the product that you are getting, but if we had to take the sales data into consideration here, let's see which of the product did the maximum in terms of sales. So if I did the sum of sales and then sorted it down, you will see that bed, sofa, portable grill, leaf blower are the ones that are the pricey stuff in terms of sales. So they sold more, they created more revenue or sales than the ones that actually sold more number of times also, right? Yeah, so for that, Yonkut, what we did is I basically did change data source, and I selected the tables again and did okay. So if you want to automatically include all the rows without you changing the pivot source, so what you can do is you can change this into a table, and if you add a new column, right, you can just refresh this data, and it'll automatically get you that output, right? So formatting as table is one advantage, and obviously in SQL, if you add a column, it's automatically there, so we can use it there, right? So that's the question that we are going to be answering next in this particular thing, right? Where we are basically answering a question where we are trying to find the price details available. So obviously you want to get the the joins and all of that will remain same here, right? It's the column selections that will change, right? So obviously you want the product, the what we say, p dot product name, right, comma, obviously you want to get the price and quantity multiplied, right? So what you'll do is you can simply say o dot quantity into p dot price to get that column, right? So if I get the product name and the price together, and if I run this particular code, you'll see I'll get the the total sales column here, and I can give this a name as sales to basically get the sales information that we have here, right? So you see this information, and we sort of get this information available here, right? And then obviously I want to order this by the total sales here, in the descending order. Let's see how we get that information, right? So obviously you get this bet king, but it's not summarized yet, right? So if you want to summarize it, what you'll have to do is say group by and give the product name available, and then sum up all of these things like we did it in the pivot table, right? So if I sum it up like this, you'll see that you're now getting the bed king, bed double, portable, and sofa, and leaf blower that we generated in this particular pivot table, right? So you'll see I'm able to get this 5 different rows to be able to get this output here, right? So that's the way we yeah, so I did not do the scroll. You can do control shift down to do that, Yonkut, right? So instead of not scrolling, what you can do is you can do control shift right side or down side, like that, right? So control shift is the key. Okay, so that's how we basically answer the question of how to find the top 5 products that did in maximum number of sales, and this is how we get that particular output, right? So we are able to answer that question and able to come to a yes, that's right, I'm good. So we are able to come to a conclusion on the top 5, and if you just simply say limited to 5, then we'll simply get the top 5 product names that did maximum in terms of sales, right? And if I simply have to replicate this at a city level or the property level, right, it's going to be a little different. We just don't want the product name here. We will want the we would want to join another another table to this, right? So what we'll do is we'll do left join on the property info here, right? So we will get rid of products here, and then obviously we will get this we'll call this as property info, right? And I'm going to join it by property info dot, and then you'll see that it has a column name as prop id, right? So this particular column has prop id, so I'm going to use prop id and wrap it around this particular symbol here to basically look at this information, right? And then obviously I don't want the sales is the same, but I simply want pi dot, right? And I want the obviously the city, that is the property city, to be summarized in this particular scenario, right? So I don't want it to by product name, but I want it by product city, which will then give the same information but at a property city level, which is at this particular thing, right? Oh, I'm sorry, this has to be o dot property this will be at property id level to get us that same information, right? So obviously Kansas City did the maximum sales amongst all the other states, and these are the rest of the other 5 cities that did the maximum amount of sales, right? So this way we're able to answer the question, right? We not only got the top 5 product names that did maximum in terms of sales, but we also got the 5 cities that did maximum in terms of the sales, right? So this is how we leverage joins and group bys together, right? So we began with select statements. You did your distincts, selects, group bys, sort, and order by, and then we did group bys again with order by, sort. We did the sorts, and then we also did the where conditions. And similarly, we did the joins and group bys combined with order by and whatever statements that we could find in terms of doing that. And not only that, we also joined 3 tables together to get information and try to answer a particular question, right? So that's how we put build on this particular statements, right? So whenever you're working on this thing, right, you have to master some of these statements and look at the question in perspective and try to resolve those questions, right? So to end it, obviously we have certain other questions that we can look at here, right? You'll see that you have joins and group bys where you want to find the top 5 products in each of the cities, right? So in each of the cities will be looking a little different in terms of how you solutionize this particular thing, right? So if I have to look at the same information, right, you need to attach city information to this particular thing, where I can simply say we look, let's say the city that we have here, right? I can simply say we look up, get the property ID here, right, from the table that we have here, right? I'm going to say get the second column with the exact match here, and basically I'll get the city here, and this time I simply have to refresh this table to include the I have to include this here, say okay, and now I'll have city with me, right? So if I take city with me with the product name and convert this into a report layout such as this, right, you'll see that you'll have a city, product name, and all of that information. But if I had to basically remove the grand totals and remove this, you'll basically have a data which has this information with you, where you can find the top 5 of each of the cities, right? So the way that you have to do it is you have to just say sort right? And then sort it by city first, and then sort it by sales from largest to smallest. So if you had to find the top 5 products that sold in a city for the Arlington, it's basically these 5 products that sold top, right? And if I just move beyond this Arlington city, you'll go to Atlanta, right? You'll see that Atlanta has 5 different products, right? And similarly, that's how this information works, right? Now, uh, obviously, I mean, you really want to get this information. Now this is a little tricky information, but what I leave you to do in this particular this thing is I'll take you to a point and see how you can try to answer this particular thing, right? We will try to do it for a particular city, that is Arlington, and let's see if you're able to get the same result or no, right? So if I had to go to this particular statement here, we remember we want to do it, and this is our 10th problem statement that we want to get all the, for a particular city, what's the total number of products. What we will do here is that we will take this particular information here, right? And with this, we are now also going to attach the p dot product name here, right? And similarly, I'm going to also take comma and then put it here in this particular place, right? So basically what we're doing is we're just adding the product name and the product city here, and just selecting this particular thing to be able to get we are just not going to use limit in this particular scenario, but if you just do this particular statement, you'll see that you'll get the property, city, product name, and sales, right? But we want to get it for Arlington. So what we will do is we'll also apply a where condition here, right? So where this city, property city is equal to this particular name, right? So this particular property city is equal to this particular city, and if I simply take it here, run it, you'll see that I get the Arlington data here, and we're getting sofa, chest of drawers, armoire, and all of that information, much like we have it in this particular thing, right? So we're getting this particular information, and we're getting the top 5. We need just top 5, so we are just going to put the limit 5 on top of it here. So if I do this, you'll be able to get the top 5 products that sold in a particular city. And again, this is a little tricky. I know this is a little tricky to understand at the first instance when you're learning it, but I wanted to leave you with something that you can think about or ponder over on what is the level of complexity you're going to be dealing with. Again, this is a very basic level, but this is some of the complexities that you'll be dealing with whenever you are learning SQL, right? So I want you to have an end state in mind of what this whole SQL problem solving methodology will be looking like, right? So with that, these are the examples that I have in this particular series, the SQL session, a short and quick one that we did. And I want to leave it back to the forum here on how do you feel about some of the things that you learned today. I'm also going to give the feedbacks link here for all of you to fill up. You can simply copy paste it and then use it. But how are the takeaways that you took from this particular session, guys? What are the takeaways? Like, what did you learn that is going to inspire you? Yeah, so for 3 cities, what you'll have to do is you'll have to do do it for 3, apply it for another city and then join this information here, right? Again, that's a little bit advanced. We have to do the row number and get it to the 5 and all of that thing, but yeah, that way you have to use some window functions to get all of those answers. So yep, that will be a little tricky to get. Okay, cool. So what are some of the things that you have learned, guys, today? and what you found interesting, and how good do you feel about SQL. Also guys, remember to fill the feedback form. Just double clicked there on that, Manish. So some of them are asking how I got the sum of sales. What I did is basically, if you have the table format something like this, you just need to do this into this and it will automatically get it into all of the columns, right? Or you can just double click this and you'll be able to get it, or you can just go down, select it, and then control copy and V, then you will be able to get it, right? So that's some of the methods that you get it there. Yeah, for now in that scenario, Kumari, in this particular knowledge, whatever we have to do it for every city separately. But ideally, there is much more advanced functions that are there to solve that, right? So I wanted you to know that there are little bit of advanced topics that are still available. But yeah, this is something that we can do with the knowledge that we have right now. Yep. Done. Nice. Nice. Thank you guys for the feedback. Now, obviously, we are going to do one more session in the next week itself. So hopefully you can join there. This next time we're going to be doing dashboards on how to build the basic building blocks of dashboards using Excel itself. You're going to use Excel. So have your Excel licenses with you, because again, this will be a hands-on session which you can follow along with me. So have your Excel licenses ready, have Excel ready, and we are going to be working on that, right? We can do more webinars on SQL, advanced topics, but yeah, next session we're going to do it on Excel dashboarding. Thank you, Yashwant, Nalam, Ishika, Arvind. Thank you for the feedback, Arvind. Nikita, thank you. Definitely, we'll work together with Orator and see what more sessions we can bring on the table, guys. Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a nice rest of the Sunday, and enjoy learning a lot of SQL and Excel. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel also, guys. No problem, Kumari. The recording will be available at the end. So I will give the link to Orator and he will send the link to you so you can watch it once it's live, right? It will be immediately live. So Orator will send it to you guys. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, guys.